creepy and cool TikToks that will blow your mind. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go!
Disclaimer: this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research, as these clips haven't been fact-checked.
Thought that I would ever be involved in something this horrible. Tony was a friend. I don't judge people. I knew he was kind of off. He showed me some of the strangest things I've ever seen in my life. And that's the first time I heard of Lucerta, a shape-shifting reptilian who looked like a normal person.
What?
He believed that reptilian lizard people were here to kill humans, to eat them, and take over. A lot of people believe this stuff. Lots of them. Tony was obsessed. And I was not to speak to anyone. And if I did, I was going to pay for it. He started telling me that something big was going to happen. Everybody's going to remember it. And on Christmas Day, when I saw the news, I knew immediately it was too late.
Oh. Watch Midnight Meat Train with Bradley Cooper.
There's a ruin in Scotland that will send shivers down your spine. Enter if you dare through a dark, narrow tunnel into the subterranean realm where a wizard made a pact with the devil, summoning hobgoblins to build his chamber to practice dark magic. This is the Yester Castle and the Goblin Ha, located deep into a forest near the village of Gifford, into the eerie woodlands, exploring the fascinating ruins through the inviting tiny doorway. Winding down, an entrance appears, tempting you to go inside. A sense of claustrophobia, hearing only your breathing and footsteps, finding another doorway leading deeper underground. Follow for more walks and places in Scotland.
I think that place is magical.
He said they speak no language but bark like dogs, and in this manner make themselves understood by each other. Their teeth are larger than those of dogs, their nails like those of these animals, but longer and rounder. They inhabit the mountains as far as the river Indus. So this is in India. They're reported to live primarily in India and northern Africa, but were seen in many places in between. So he's saying, not only have I seen them, but anybody I've talked to that's seen them has seen them all over the place. So they weren't in just one specific area. He said their complexion is swarthy. They are extremely just, like the rest of the Indians with whom they associate. So it's said that these cynocephalists actually bartered and traded with the people from India that were close by the mountains. So they would go into town, or the Indians would come there and they would barter and trade. And he said they were extremely just. They were good natured. And he said that he basically went and stayed with them for a while. And he said they lived on raw meat and they numbered about 120,000 in the mountains.
What?
That is crazy to think about. That many were living in the mountains at the time. Now, you may wonder, like, well, why aren't we seeing them now? Well, as time went and as the religious factions of the church became more militant, and we're not talking about just one specific type of church or religion, but all these different religions and churches became more militant, you will see throughout history where they would wipe out what they thought was demonic in any area they were at. We've heard about the trolls in Iceland being wiped out. We've heard about all of these other creatures that have been wiped out by the church. And you will see in text and even in stained glass depictions where they were considered demonic and were driven out or killed in large numbers. So that could be why we don't know about these 120,000 dogmen or cynocephalists that live close to India and in northern Africa. At least that's what I think could have happened throughout history. And sadly, here we go with Teasy is talking about how good natured they were, but here is man again wiping out what they don't understand. And this also plays back into this good Nephilim theory of mine.
They were good natured, so they were good boys. Is that what you're saying?
One day I was sitting in my bed. All of a sudden the hand of God just came upon my right shoulder, and he pulled my whole life in front of my face. There were 41 pictures. It was like the film out of a camera. And then he said, "This isn't you. This is what the devil has done to you." He showed me getting a nose job done, getting rid of my beard, having my Adam's apple shaved.
Oh, Lord.
And when he said that to me, because I went through my life talking to God, there were times I'd talk to God before I even knew God. But I used to cry and say, why do I feel like a girl trapped in a man's body? It was a lifelong torture for 41 years. And one day I was really angry because I wanted to feel different within. I didn't want the desires to do drugs. I didn't want the homosexual lifestyle. I didn't want the transgender identity confusion in my mind. I was really angry because I heard on TV that this Jesus changes you from within and does this and does that. Well, my heart was crying out, I want that. So I angrily said to God one day, why don't I feel any different? I want to feel different. And he was so sweet, as he is. He didn't say a word. But the next day I was making my bed, and when I tucked in the sheet and I stood up, he said, "Behold, all old things have passed away. You're a new creation in me." And when he said that, I just knew all the old drugs, the lifestyle, the addictions, everything was gone instantly. And so it's been 14 years now that I've been delivered from that lifestyle. And the Lord just instilled in my heart a supernatural hunger to read the Word of God. And every time I get in that Bible, I'd hear God speak to me. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. It was just so amazing how He'd reveal things to me, especially show me how much He loves me. I couldn't fathom that. I remember there was a day I just said, "You mean to tell me you, the God who created billions and billions of people," I couldn't believe that He would take time out of His day to talk to somebody who thought that they were so dirty and just so bad, from the prostitution and all that stuff that I had done all those years, because I thought I was too naughty, I was too bad. I thought He wanted nothing to do with me. And then, that couldn't have been any more other than the truth. He died on the cross for me.
Yeah.
The aftermath, after you know the truth through Jesus Christ, that's the hard part.
Such a beautiful story of redemption and salvation. Thank you for sharing.
All right, here is this weekend's edition of Wild and Weird Old Articles. What if the Egyptians and Assyrians were from America and they built a massive underground highway under the Mississippi River in St. Louis? I found this article and I almost can't stop laughing because it's so crazy. So I believe this was published in 1869. And they're talking about the excavation work that was being done as they were building one of the major bridges over the Mississippi River in St. Louis. While they were blasting the rocks in the bottom of the excavation for the foundation of a pier for this bridge, they discharged an extraordinarily large blast of powder when immediately after the report, a strange phenomenon presented itself. Instead of having the usual time for the smoke to clear away, they saw it ascend rapidly in a column as though issuing from the smokestack of one of their steamers. It soon cleared, and it was found that a steady amount of air with a strange damp odor was issuing from the cavernous excavation, showing that an opening had been made into some unknown subterranean passage. Upon descending to the bottom, the usual mud and water had disappeared through a dark, deep opening in the rock about 10 feet in diameter, made by the last discharge of powder. Ropes, ladders, and torches were immediately procured, and careful explorations begun. They go on to say that they cannot currently enter into a detailed description, but having been invited to accompany the Board of Engineers from the Academy of Science and Historical Society, they will reserve a full exposition of the wonderful discovery until they have made a more careful survey. I wonder if that ever happened, if they ever exposed more information about it, or if it just disappeared. They say, suffice for the present to say that it is certain that this corridor they found passes entirely under the river to the Illinois shore, and whether it is wholly the work of some ancient race who once inhabited this land, whose interesting remains are strewn so thickly up and down this great valley, or whether it is partially natural and partially artificial, remains to be seen. In either case, it is nonetheless stupendous. The main passages we should judge to be about 20 feet high by 15 broad, and systematically overhead part of the way by cutting through solid rock and part of substantial masonry. The bottom was much worn as if by carriage wheels of some sort. So this was a roadway, you guys, that went under the Mississippi from the Missouri side to the Illinois side. And it was 20 feet by 15 feet. There are also many lateral passages, which of course we had no time to enter. They're about 8 feet high and 6 feet wide. They go on to say that in the main passageway, they saw no tools or implements of workmanship, but when they entered one of the lateral passages, they emerged into a large chamber supported by pillars of solid rock. In that around the walls of this chamber, there were what seemed to be niches closed with closely fitting slabs, each slab covered with inscriptions. And I'm having trouble reading that word, but it says the inscriptions, I believe it says, were in runic uniform character, which to our eyes bore a marvelous resemblance to those upon the slab from the mines of Nineveh. Between the niches were projecting pilasters with draped Assyrian or Egyptian heads, which presented a most impressive and awe-inspiring effect as they were illuminated by the torchlight. It goes on to say that one of the passages opening on the north side seemed to follow the course of the river, and it is believed extends to the great mound now being removed by the North Missouri Railroad, which was the theme of much interesting remark at the last meeting of the Historical Society. So St. Louis was originally known as Mound City, and it was covered in massive mounds. Cahokia Mounds is still across the river in Illinois, which is one of the biggest. It says that the mound known as Monk's Mound is on the other side of the river and is but one of a continuous chain of mounds extending from the river to the bluffs, a distance of 9 miles. It is conjectured that the tunnel under the river and the mounds are intimately connected, and that there was in ancient times an opening through the mounds from the subterranean highway. And then they go on to mention that when they were excavating Monk's Mound, that also disagreeable gases and odors would come out of it, the same way they were describing what happened when they broke through, when they were putting the pillar in for the river, that they broke through and stinky air came out. The same thing happened with Monk's Mound, which makes them think that it's all connected. They then discovered a descending opening about 7 feet high by 3 feet wide. Following this about 50 yards, they found a flight of steps, 41 steps, in ascending, in which they found themselves in a chamber of wonders, oval in shape, about 7 feet high and 3 feet wide. The walls of this chamber were sculpted in magnificent bas relief and runic inscriptions. They have a professor looking at these inscriptions, and he is very confident of some of the words, and also one of the magnificent groups he's certain is intended to represent Ahasuerus crowning Queen Elizabeth. I'm not sure what that means. And I don't understand what this sentence means either, but it sounds interesting. It says another group of colossal figures representing captives following the car. I don't know what car means, of a victorious conqueror, are portraits of Luke Deuteronomy and the friend going into captivity. I'm not familiar with that. I do not know what that means. And then they go on to compare this to the treasures of Rock Island discovery, and I'm not familiar with that. I'm going to have to look that up next. And they believe it's possible both of these places were the work of the same ancient people. So they're implying that the work was done by Assyrians or Egyptians in St. Louis under the Mississippi. So there you go. There are so many articles like this, you guys. I know that people struggle to wrap their minds around there not being the archaeological evidence to support biblical lands being in America that they want there to be. But there is evidence, but we have to look outside of where we're used to looking. Because there are so many articles like this, and then they end with, they reported it to the Smithsonian. And then that was the end of that. Nothing ever came of it. There are so many articles, like the huge, massive metropolis that was buried under the creation of the Hoover Dam, buried it. And now there's no information about it. It was massive amounts of evidence. And it was all hidden. So we have to keep looking because there is information out there. It's just harder to find, right? Anyway, I thought this article was so cool, so I wanted to share it.
Smithsonian, the king of gatekeeping.
The initiation rites have been performed. The individual comes forth by day. He realizes his place in the plan. He realizes what is next for him. He realizes that going into this larger life is an opportunity to correct all failings of his own thinking, that he will come closer and closer to the eternal truths, which are the source of his ultimate union with deity. So by coming forth by day, he comes consciously into the afterlife, fully equipped to face its mysteries, fully equipped to adjust to its circumstances, and already able, at least dimly, to perceive the face of the great God that hides behind the veil.
The reason why they're doing this is that they want us to become entranced by the idea of this religion, to have it be cool, to have it be trendy. So one of the things they do is this symbol, which is 666. Each finger is one of the stems of the 6. So you'll see people do stuff like this. You'll also see them put their finger over their eye like this. That's the all-seeing eye. Or they'll do this a lot. You'll have this kind of symbolism. So they're out there putting out these sigils and signs and codes and symbols, and they do it through things like pop music. So people start watching what's ever popular, and they're seeing flames, and they're seeing people dancing around in Baphomet horns, and they're seeing all this really strange stuff. Their goal, again, is to acquaint us with their religion so that if they get their goal realized, which is to create a massive world economic collapse, greatly reduce population, and then come out as our liberators, giving us this technology, giving us what they consider to be freedom, we would actually be trading our sovereignty for a...
Still think the Bible is make-believe?
We have regular board meetings, like around big board tables, and we're all gathered together, and 2 extraterrestrials come, and they sit on one end, and we ask them questions. And they tell us what's been going on. They absolutely insist that humans have to understand their composite nature, that the physical body is not who they are. The physical body is just nothing. It's like clothing that you're wearing, and that you're actually inside that. This planet is being run as a prison by a group of extraterrestrials who they oppose.
Ooh. What up, everybody? It's Angel Dust. I will say one thing today. You will have a very hard time finding somebody who is miserable, who is having a terrible day, who has woken up and moved their body, gone to the gym, lifted weights, taken care of themselves, done stretch, yoga, whatever, ate well, did a gratitude list, not fucking around, did 5 to 10 minutes of meditation, and then reached out to somebody to give them some love. If somebody does that every day for 2 weeks, their whole fucking life changes. The problem is, nobody will fucking do it. Why? Because it's working on yourself. And working on yourself is hard. And there's a lot more to it than that. But start with that and let's see how it goes. I'll see you next Sunday. 1 week challenge, everybody. 1 week. I'll see you next Sunday. Peace, blessings, and shine on.
Yeah. What's with the skull, man? Cross and skull.
Pedophiles are in power.
Yes.
They are literally in power. And that is intentional because then they can be controlled while they are in power. And they are also exhibiting signs of a psychopathology that lets them know that they will do harm to the masses and feel nothing because they were themselves, many of them, raped when they were children. Yep. It's not a coincidence that Justin Trudeau is gay. Obama, gay. Zelensky, gay. Emmanuel Macron, gay and married to a trans man who molested him when he was a child.
Wow.
And that despite the overwhelming evidence, for me, the litmus test now is like Brigitte Macron. I'm like, if you want to figure out who is a fraud in media, there's no way to read that 6-part series and go through it and come out of it being like, no, totally legit. Like these are just rumors. It's like one picture of yourself in your first 30 years of living, please. And they
show me her brother.
Where's your brother?
Where is
John
he?
Michel.
I'll show you my brother. Yeah. Where's your brother?
Yeah.
It's actually.
She sounds crazy, but she's absolutely correct. We all sounds crazy who are knowledgeable to those who aren't.
If you could meet the devil.
Met him twice.
You've met him twice?
Personally.
Twice.
I wasn't even a seminarian. I was discerning. I just came out of my life of sin. Middle of the day, it's like noon. I come out of the church and there's this beautiful, handsome man, custom tailored suit. And he's staring at me. And I just was like, weird. So I turned to walk towards my office and he runs up next to me and he grabs me by the arm and he goes, let's get a drink. And I just had chills go up and down my body. I said, get away from me. And then I turned direction and went towards my apartment. I walked through the doors and the doors closed behind me. And I looked out and he was just laughing at me. Then a few years later, I was on a vacation visiting an old banker friend down in Miami. She set up a whole luncheon at this place called Nikki Beach, which really isn't appropriate for seminarians or priests. The two girls to my right, I knew both of them. And they start looking at this guy across. God, look at that guy. He's so handsome. Oh, he's coming over here. And it's him. It's the one that wanted to get the drink. And he walks up and he goes, what are you doing here? I thought you were going to be a priest. This is my territory. You shouldn't be here. When those things happen, God was letting me know, you have no place going to places like that anymore.
Yep. Jesus is the only way.
Yeah, it's Virginia. There's plenty of native and tribal ground around here.
Yeah.
You're familiar with 895, the highway?
Yeah.
Like Pocahontas Parkway?
Yeah.
If you've ever driven Route 895, the Pocahontas Parkway, late at night, you know how empty and eerie that stretch of road can feel. But few realize that it was built over top of sacred native ground. During construction in the early 2000s, crews uncovered ancient Powhatan tribal sites, burial mounds, and artifacts dating back thousands of years. Work continued on the highway anyway, and soon after the highway opened, people started reporting things that could not be explained. The first major incident came from a truck driver one summer night. He swore that he saw 3 Native American warriors standing in the middle of the highway holding torches. He slammed on his brakes. He blinked, and they were gone. He pulled into the toll plaza to report what he had seen. Police went to check it out, but there was nothing. Then a lot more reports started rolling in, and toll booth operators began hearing the sound of drums echoing from the nearby woods. Sometimes it was a faint, rhythmic beat. Other times it was loud enough to rattle the glass of the cars. They'd step outside, shine their flashlights into the trees, and the sound would stop. Even state troopers patrolling the parkway after midnight have described seeing shadowy riders on horseback galloping silently alongside their vehicles before vanishing into the fog. And on some nights, the toll plaza staff say that they can feel a rush of cold air as if a car just sped past, only to find that there's no vehicle on the cameras and no tire tracks on the pavement. Locals call it the Poca-haunted Parkway. Some say that it's the spirits of the land just reminding travelers that this stretch of road was not always meant to belong to them. To this day, these stories continue. Even the most skeptical admit that there's something unsettling about that highway, something ancient, like someone's watching. If you ever find yourself alone on 895 at night, turn down the radio and listen closely. You might just hear the faint sound of drums in the distance.
Ooh, I like that one.
Dude, it's pretty crazy because there's actually a lot of legitimacy to this story. There are people who have actually camped out on the side of 895 to like monitor and listen for these things, and they confirmed that they do hear it.
We should do that.
We should.
Let me know how you feel about this in the comment, folks.
Yes, that's one of the rockets. Is that for what? I don't know what that is. What is that?
That's AI.
Well, if that's a rocket, it's going to explode, and we're going to hear the explosion here in a minute. Oh, no, it's still going. Right?
So many bizarre things in the sky these days.
Cathedral in the south of France, in a place called Narbonne. And this cathedral, like many other cathedrals, was designed by the Knights Templar and sympathizers of the Knights Templar. Now, we know through the confessions of the Knights Templar that they were involved in black magic, and they had idols called Baphomets. And, really the big joke about these cathedrals is that people pay thousands of pounds to come on pilgrimages, say from Germany or Yugoslavia or somewhere. People think they're going to have a wonderful Christian spiritual holiday. Well, that's far from the truth. The truth of the matter is that this is a Kabbalistic temple, and it contains carvings of most of the demons that you find in ancient magical scriptures, such as the Ars Goetia, the Testament of Solomon, the Clavicule of Solomon, and many of the other magical texts that have made their way into Europe from ancient Babylon, ancient Chaldea, which is a province of Babylon, and from Sumeria as well. Well, the truth of the matter is that many people who claim to be cardinals and priests and members of the Catholic Church are actually involved in black magic. And there is such a thing as a black mass. Now, the black mass is exactly the same as the Catholic mass, except everything is reversed. And instead of praising Jesus and God, they praise Satan and Lucifer.
Wow. Jeremy Corbell, George Knapp, please look me up. I'm a whistleblower. We live in a square like the Brady Bunch, and in those other squares are different civilizations. Space is fake. It's all it is a sailing. 3i Atlas is on its way back. That's actually the Anunnaki. They realize the Greys have a soul catcher on the moon, and they've been fucking trapping us for thousands of years. The Anunnakis found out about it, and they're coming back. That's why you see all these drones going back and forth. Those aren't really drones. Those are fallen angels. Listen, God is real. Jesus is real. George, please hit me up, man. I got information for you. I gotta go. I've been being looked for right now. People like Elon Musk and Incorporated, those guys, those are reptilians. They manipulate our brain and make us think that they're really humans, but they're not. They're reptilians. This world is bonkers, guys. That's why over at Skinwalker Ranch, they've been digging into the ground. It's all technology. Underneath the ground is technology, and underneath that ground is a different civilization. Guys, it's weirder than you think. I gotta go. George, hit me up.
All right.
In the course of his astral projections, he discovered that we're living in a control system that is managed by entities who work for a demiurge that's harvesting us for what he called loosh. He said that we're in a loosh farm, that humans are being deliberately subjected to conditions that create extreme emotional states. Extreme suffering, misery, fear, terror, ecstasy, extreme desire, pathological impulses, and these are all being used to basically generate a form of energy that they can harvest from the human soul, including after death. Where they basically juice souls for the loosh.
It's actually called The Werewolf of Henrico.
Okay.
And this story dates back, I think, to the early 80s. It's like one of the first accounts. And this woman heard some commotion outside and thought it was the kids, checked on the kids, and it wasn't the kids. Kids also heard the commotion. She said that she heard what sounded like howling and then what sounded like screeching. And she realized that the screeching was someone scratching on the back door to her house. And then she noticed the floodlights outside flickering on and off as if something was moving around under the motion lights. So she didn't look outside because she didn't want to be seen. She goes outside with a flashlight out the front door, goes around back, sees something that she describes as 6 to 7 feet tall, standing on 2 legs, covered in hair, with the hands up against the window where her children were. When she sees it, it looks at her in the eyes, it has yellow eyes. It looks almost like a man, but still very much like a wolf. It approaches her a little bit, growls, and then runs away on all fours. The next day, she notices that there were scratches on her door, scratches on the windowsill where her children were, and like claw or like big footprints right at the base of the in the yard where the window was. But there were no other footprints that she could find. Spotted around the Confederate Hills Recreation Center, which is a very open space. Most people report that it runs away in fear, but occasionally will run after people. Some people said it growled and barked at them, while others say it just stared at them until they noticed it and it ran away. People have also said they hear it howling at night, mainly on full moons. One man says he lives near the recreation center and that he and his neighbors have seen and heard it multiple times and fear it. Like that scares the fuck out of me.
That's crazy.
Excuse my F-bomb, because there are multiple accounts, and this isn't in Oklahoma or in the Midwest or in California. This is down the street.
Noah's Ark, if you look at the country of Turkey, over here at the far corner in Turkish on a Turkish map, it says Noah on Gumshi, which means Noah's big boat. This way, 5 kilometers. They got signs, you drive right to it. The Bible says it rested in the 7th month upon the mountains, plural mountains, of Ararat. Right here, Life magazine published the article about the high-altitude spy plane in 1960 that flew over eastern Turkey. And there's a mud and lava flow here coming off the mountains of Ararat. And they noticed this weird teardrop-shaped object in there. I said, what is that? Nobody thought much about it, but they did a few expeditions there and said, man, this might be Noah's Ark. In 1978, there was an earthquake. That area is very geologically unstable. And either it came up or the ground fell down. We don't know, but the result's the same. It's now sticking up out of the ground about 20 feet.
Wow.
And Ron and others verified that, hey, this is indeed Noah's Ark right there. Radar scans show beams underneath, deck timbers, heavy-duty lumber down in there. It was apparently bolted together with rivets. They knew about iron. Remember, we read that in Genesis chapter 4, Tubal Cain, an artificer of brass and iron. I mean, that was way back before the flood. That was Adam's great-grandson. So they find these rivets over there. Apparently, giant rivets were used to bolt the ark together. And it looked like it's made out of 3 layers of wood, plywood. One theory is that gopher wood means plywood, 3 layers laminated. And they cut a section of it off. And sure enough, there are 3 very distinct layers of wood, 4.5 inches thick. That's heavy-duty plywood. So the ark would have landed way up here at Kazan, which, by the way, is Turkish language means village of 8. Why would you name a village of 8? How many people on that boat? 8. Yeah, what do you think? Anyway, it's now way down here, 17 miles away. But there's the village of Kazan, Turkey.
There's books, like metal books and stone books, and they're bound together oftentimes by rings of metal that are glued together. This is the one that we carbon dated at 40,000 years. It's on that. It's the 3rd one, the resin sample. And I brought the ring here, actually.
And this is how old?
37,000.
37,000 year old piece of metal, potentially. But what you're dating is the resin that's on this material.
Yeah, they glued the 2 pieces. You can see the black substance there. That's on the ends where the ring would go inside there. And so they put resin and then stuck it together to hold it together. And yeah, if you look at this book, see, there's the Booga chip on this thing. There's DNA symbols. There's angels. This book specifically doesn't have any phallus or anything like that, but there's very graphic sexual depictions of angels and aliens mating. Clearly there was something going on. I don't think they would go through all of this trouble to create these pictures if there wasn't more to it.
The man who was exalted to the highest position in Illuminism and Masonry at that time was a man named Albert Pike. In 1887 and 88, these men established what was called a Palladian Rite. They established 3 great world centers of Masonic control for international conspiracy and world revolution. One was in the United States, one was in Germany, and one was in Rome. Albert Pike spoke and wrote in 16 languages fluently. He was one of the most amazing geniuses the world had ever known, and yet he led out in magnificent seances where demons would manifest and float around in the air right out in public. from a letter that he wrote to the Palladium, the secret society in 1889. Albert Pike said, "That which we say to the crowd is that we worship God. But," and he's saying, but it is the God that one worships without superstition. You see, the God of human reason. It says the religion should be by all us initiates of the high degrees maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. That's the religion of the Illuminati. Yes, he says, Lucifer is God. And unfortunately, Adonai is God also, for the absolute can exist only as two gods. They believed in a balance between good and evil. But notice, Lucifer is their God, and Adonai, he says, is unfortunately God also. That's the name they give to Jesus Christ.
That small craft that they sent here, that crashed at Roswell, could not possibly have made an interstellar journey. So, using the communications device, after the alien died in 1952, we kept communicating with his home planet. And we evidently established that they did indeed have a mothership in orbit. So we suggested, why don't you send down another craft so that we can analyze it and reverse engineer it? And they agreed. And they agreed to that. Mm-hmm. And that craft landed in Kingman, Arizona in 1953. It was taken on a tank trailer to the Nevada test site. And we began to reverse engineer that craft, and we succeeded. By 1962, we had one working.
Let's just say I was with somebody once, and I saw a transformation that I can't explain.
The person transformed into something other than human.
Yes, I saw it.
Were you on drugs?
I was not. I was totally sober.
Wow.
I want to see this.
Imagine you're doing something, and suddenly you turn around and there's somebody else standing there.
A different human.
Sorta. It's hard to explain without going into detail. I'd rather not go into details.
But did you say to the person, what'd you just do here? That's
yes,
not you.
And they acknowledged it.
And what did they say they were?
The person was naked.
Were you in bed with the shapeshifter? Were you making love?
Tell you in confidence.
I find this story so crazy, and I'm so glad that he came forward with it. The Smashing Pumpkins frontman later explained that he was being vague on air out of fear for his career and well-being for his loved ones. In a later interview with The People's Voice, he alleged, "Demons exist. They are real. They are reptilian. That's why the Bible says Eve was seduced by a snake. Substitute reptile for snake." Billy later elaborated about his experience with the record industry Illuminati. He said that he had an encounter with an industry executive who shapeshifted right in front of him during a meeting. He said, "I can't remember his exact words to me, but he said something along the lines of, 'All humans will suffer an unending agony. You will do our will.'"
In 2001, a video surfaced out of Redlands, California, featuring a demonic figure caught on camera. And this took place inside what they called the Barton Villa, which is still a historic landmark to this day. Now, this was filmed before YouTube existed, but still managed to go viral. And throughout its roughly 20-minute runtime, a group of friends explore and break into the Barton mansion, because at this time, it was abandoned and vacant. Eventually, after exploring the outside, the night falls, and they explore the inside. At this point, everything's normal, aside from being creepy. It wasn't until they walked upstairs that this happened. Take a look.
Cover my back, all right. What the hell's that? Down on the floor. Where? Right there.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Sit in. Oh, go. The gap. Go. Swear to God. Fuck. Go. No.
Someone's in there?
Swear to God. Swear to God. Oh, shit. Hell yeah.
You guys are lying.
We're not kidding. No. Go left. Go. Hit the gas and go.
I can't see your freaking cameras in my way.
Oh, fuck.
You guys are lying. Someone help me.
No, fuck. We're serious.
After reaching the top of the stairs, they see something that only can be described as demonic, holding what looks to be a lantern of some kind. In addition, the figure was so tall it had to bend under the doorframe. Now, there were rumors of cult-like activity here, and the legend said that a demon resided on the second floor. And to this day, the creators never came out and said that they faked this. But as always, let me know what you think.
I rebuke this in the name of Jesus Christ.
We have a native terrestrial reptoid species that we often refer to as the raptor species. They live down there. We have a indigenous native insectoid species, which we kind of think of as ant people.
Okay.
They live down there. We also have species, some who are not from here but live and work there, but also the ancient Lemurians, Atlanteans, when some of them went, underground, that's where some of the beginning of some of the Agarthan cities that we kind of think of as run by the Nordics, these sort of tall, blondie, blue-eyed folks who were originally Lemurian Atlanteans but went underground. So it's a mixture of native terrestrial species, mammalian, insectoid, reptoid, as well as other extraterrestrial species who have either been stationed here or in some cases have moved here to work here in some of those cities for the same reasons that people travel to other countries for jobs there as well, because they want to go to another place and do a job there instead of staying home where it's boring. So it's a number of species, most who are native terrestrial born species and a few extraterrestrial species.
They look like a Scooby-Doo villain.
This guy had a friend who he personally saw do things that were not supposed to be possible. You only see in Marvel movies. Superhuman speed and physically growing in front of him. Background story of it is when he was a kid, he was recruited to work for an entity and he accepted.
Wow.
And when he did that, it took him into this whole other life where he would access other realms through first to be dreaming and lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
But then it got to the point where, and this guy who I'm talking to told me that it happened right in front of him. He called his friend because his brother was going through something. He's like, I don't know who to call. I'm going to call my friend who does this weird stuff. And he shows up and his friend says to him, it's going to get weird right now. I need you to stay calm.
Wow.
And he said, then his friend grew like 7 inches in front of him. And when he was done growing, looked at him and said his friend's name and said, he's not here right now, but he'll be back soon. And he invites this thing
demon
into his house. He's like, it looked like him, but it didn't look like him. And then when his friend came back, he shrunk back down. He was exhausted and he walked away and he said, I got to go home and rest. But I say this because I know it sounds like a movie, but I was able to track down people connected to this story who verified this.
Yeah.
And nobody seems to want to actually come out and talk about it except for this one guy who wasn't directly involved in this big story. And so it's an ongoing thing, I suppose. But I say this because one of the things that I was faced with was like, if this is true, like we're talking about something, recruiting people to work for it. Mm-hmm. And then in the time that I first heard that story, other people were coming to me saying the same thing that I hadn't aired it yet. Like nobody knew that I had this story.
Wow.
And I was like, what is going on? And I've uncovered, it has to be like at least a dozen of people's stories that haven't all been on the show because they don't want to talk. Like the one guy, I called him and he walked off the factory floor that he was working at night. Within 3 minutes, he's sobbing, maybe 30 seconds, crying his eyes out, scared to tell his wife what he's been through. He cuts it off. And we were supposed to record and he told me, he's like, listen, since I talked to you, things have been getting really bad and weird. I'm scared, lose my number. Don't ever talk to me again.
Yeah.
And so we never talked again.
Extraterrestrials. They told us that's what they were. They told us that they were the enemy of God, and they had this big pitch, Phil, which I didn't hear at all, but they pretty much convinced all the other scientists that they were going to be in this ultra-galactic war against God and that we were going to win. Because I always wondered how he's going to
God will win.
And I don't believe in a pre-trib rapture. I believe in post-trib. Otherwise, God wouldn't have wrote Revelations for the simple reason when they come and the Christians disappear from extermination, all they're going to do is tell them. I seen this in a script in a paper that I looked at. I was at S4. It said that the Christians will disappear, we'll exterminate them, and we'll lie to the public and convince them that we gave them to they call them undesirables, and we gave them to to space beings in exchange for information so they could do experimentation on them.
Clothes. He was on a table. I did ask him this question, which I thought was really interesting. It's a detail I never heard before. I asked him if his if his feet were like hanging off the bed, off the table. And he goes, no. So I said, so it's a human-sized table, which I thought was interesting.
Wait, if the feet were hanging off the table?
Because they're small beings. I mean, the ceiling is low. He had to crouch down.
Right.
Why would the table be human-sized, right?
So his feet would be on the ground.
Yeah. So that I thought was really interesting. I was like, oh, there's a little factory somewhere, and they're like making human-sized tables, right?
Yeah.
And so they go out this opening. They kind of scurry away pretty quickly. He then walks down this windy, narrow hallway, sort of crouched down, and it's turning. Now you can imagine the fear that he must have that around any of these corners, there might be another one of these things just waiting to pop out, right?
I don't think I can imagine that fear. This is like...
Dude, so he's walking around this corner thinking, I got to look for the way out. I have to find a way out. He doesn't know he's in a spaceship, right? He doesn't know where he is. So he's looking for a way out. He gets into this room where all of a sudden, as soon as he walks in, he can see what he says is like a star map. He doesn't know if it was a projection or if it was actual space, but the entire room that he's in is just space. And there's a chair in the middle of the room. And so he sits in the chair and he starts like fiddling with the buttons. He's looking for a door. And all of a sudden the star map starts shifting around him really quickly without him moving, which is kind of disorienting. And instantly a door opens up behind him. Now,
is it only white people that get abducted?
Once your eyes are open to the true beauty of this realm, you can see it everywhere.
Horse. Wow, look at that. Wow. Are they supposed to be whales? Yes, whales. Do we have any idea what could cause instant petrification like this? Any theories?
What did the humans look like 80,000 years into the future?
They were smaller and they were more robotic. They were almost mechanically speaking or mechanically functioning, more robotic than human.
Like heavily augmented like an AI machine, or did they have skin and just kind of behaved more robotically?
They were human looking,
okay,
robotic acting, but there's no Earth.
Oh, okay.
Earth was gone. In its place were several life spheres, as they called them. Huge spheres, transparent spheres with a ball inside of it that would look something like Earth. And they were floating around the area of where Earth used to be, which really confused the astronauts. Anyways, they were able to communicate through some sort of a frequency. And I believe he said they directed him into a point to get into the sphere. And once they were into the sphere, then they went and landed.
How far can we evolve before we stop being human?
Why does Ford have all of these vehicles stored underground at Subtropolis? And why this year vehicle? Why this year vehicle? Right here. Whatever years they are. Isn't that interesting?
No computers. No EMP will affect them. That was my first thought.
This one, you take a light and can literally move it by shining the light on these pieces of obsidian. And literally the thing starts moving based off of light. It's going to be studied at a lab here in America. It is in America. It's safe and sound, but it's quite the project to get in there innovatively and understand how it works. And so there's a team that's working on it in California.
What could the power source be?
I think magnetic. If I had to guess, it's something to do with magnets.
Okay.
And if you look at Nikola Tesla's work and some of the things he was working on patent-wise, things that he figured out possibly that may have related to this, and maybe even why his research is still not released to us today. What's interesting is both those sensors, if you put it outside, it'll follow the sun based on where the sun is in the sky. The sun will be hitting one or other of those, I don't know what to call them, just the obsidian pieces, and it'll hold it in a position based on the light. So as the sun moves across the sky, the dish will move. There was clearly a level of engineering going on here and technology going on here that resonates with Plato's Atlantis talk. I mean, the Atlantis technology, if these are 40,000 years old, then it could be from that era.
It's not an artifact. It's an artification.
You know that Prince Charles is the main heir of Count Dracula? I agree. That sounds insane. I bet you $1 million.
Bring that up, Jamie.
I bet Prince Charles, Count Dracula. Okay. Prince Charles is the heir of Count Dracula.
Is that right?
He moved in 5 years ago to Count Dracula's castle, and he lives with a group of homeless children in it.
No, he does not.
I swear to God.
Prince Charles, Prince Harry's dad.
Prince Charles, the heir of the throne of the dragon.
Okay.
He is a Transylvanian prince.
According to this Google search from express.co.uk, Prince Charles has distant kinship to Vlad Tepes, the 15th century Wakallian ruler, whom the Irish novelist based his Dracula.
Hold on. Prince Charles, like the one that we all know. Prince Charles.
Yeah, he's related to Count Dracula.
This bizarre incident took place in 2016 and was captured on Officer Joe Hall's dash cam. He had pulled over a driver for making an unsafe lane change and calmly asked for his license and registration. Before the driver could hand over his documents, a strange white light suddenly illuminated the entire area. The glow was so intense that neither of them could see anything. Then something even more unsettling happened. When the light finally disappeared, Officer Hall was gone. It appeared as though the light had transported him somewhere. Panicking, the driver sped away from the scene. Despite extensive searches, Officer Hall was never found again.
Wow.
About this before? A branch off upper primate, 10 times more intelligent than a human. It's so intelligent. The way that you're conscious or I'm conscious now, it can hold 2 or 3 or 4 versions of consciousnesses like that in its head at any given moment. So it can look at topics from multiple real points of view. It goes into hibernation like a vampire. It lets the human population build up. And then when it comes out of hibernation, over a few generations, its existence may have been turned into myth, and then it hunts the population down again.
What?
Because its brain structure is so different, its visual cortex is different to a human, and it calculates like horizontal and vertical simultaneously to look. It's like a pattern recognition system for hunting. And up until a few thousand years ago, there were no right angles in nature, but humans started building Euclidean geometry buildings. That caused an overlap in its visual cortex. It sent the vampires into grand mal epileptic seizures. So we misinterpreted that as holding up crosses.
Refer back to Russia. One incident I did not mention to Representative Burleson is Colonel Sokolov in that Ministry of Defense program said there were 40 incidents where Russian warplanes were sent to intercept UFOs, and they were ordered to fire on them. And for the most part, the UFOs would zip away. 3 of the pilots, though, did fire at these things. Those 3 planes stalled out, crashed. 2 of those pilots died. And after that, the Russians changed the standing order. If you see a UFO, leave them alone.
Yep. If you ever see a UFO, you absolutely last thought should be to shoot at it.
Among the group that greeted the Anunnaki in 1954 at Muroc, which is now Edwards Air Force, there was an archbishop from Los Angeles by the name of Mike McIntyre. McIntyre had been invited to be present when they landed to meet them, because I thought, somebody ought to be representing the church here, And they brought old McIntyre over from L.A. from Muroc. And they were there for 2 days. And these guys scared the shit out of everybody with their technology. And they talked openly. The two hovered over the runway for 2 days. Just never landed. I mean, no legs or nothing. They just hovered over the damn runway. It's all on film. But the other guys come out and landed right in front of the hangar and got out and went over and, you know, shook hands or whatever. I don't know what the hell they did. McIntyre was present because Ike had invited him. Well, after it was all over with, after the second day, and the guys get back in their ship and off they go, our intelligence people got a hold of McIntyre and says, now, Archbishop, you got to understand something. You can't talk about anything you've seen. Oh, I understand. Archbishop, this is beyond top secret. You can't say a word about what we have just experienced here.
This is not speculation, by the way.
Okay.
He saw a short gray alien with a big head on a wall being depicted looking at Emperor Qin. So they were facing each other on that wall.
Inside his chamber.
Inside the chamber in the mausoleum, yes. So when Chan looked at the adjacent wall, there was basically a depiction of the Emperor Qin with a short gray alien who was like 4 to 5 feet tall, and he had a big head, bigger head than a human being, and he had, you know, slitted eyes. He looked like he was in a conversation with him. But that's what was depicted on the wall, and that shocked him. And I believe that this was the main reason why the Chinese government decided to keep it quiet and do not wish to reveal this information to the public.
This is a big reveal. So classic gray alien, you say a big head, the gray aliens always pick with giant heads. Slanted eyes, I mean the classic big black eyes. And you mentioned that the gray alien was about 4.5 feet tall. Was this like a life-size depiction of a real event or a potential real event?
Exactly, yes.
That looks like a fake painting created in modern day. What do you think?
The real Rosicrucians, they are a network of highly psychic Christians, Christian mystics. They're able to converse with and interact with higher angelic beings who fill them in on the bigger picture and what's really going on and what their divine task is within the history of humanity. That's why they are a positive secret society, because they ultimately serve the divine will, but they do it through a higher understanding than just your regular Christian who only reads the Bible in a more like literal kind of way. So within their tradition, there's this interesting book called the Comte de Gabalis, and it's a book from 1670 put out by a guy named Abbé de Villers. This guy wrote this book in order to expose the influence of non-human intelligences on human history. So he gets all into the class of beings called elementals, which are sylphs, nymphs, gnomes, and salamanders. These 4 beings, they're all humanoid. So even though we think about salamanders nowadays as little lizards, back then it was a code word for essentially reptilian-looking humanoids that were associated with fire. And the gnomes were humanoids that were kind of short and associated with earth. And the nymphs were basically, for the most part, beautiful, superhuman-looking women associated with water. And sylphs were superhuman men and women associated with the air. So it's kind of interesting that nowadays within the abduction field, you always hear about greys, which are like short. You hear about reptilian humanoids, and you hear about these Nordic type beings. I find the correspondence between those two curious.
It sounds like witchcraft to me. Higher beings? Maybe demons?
Monoleti was one of the weirdest ancient human species. They evolved directly alongside our ancestors in Africa, but they took a much different evolutionary path. They walked completely upright, but also retained the ability to climb trees. They probably didn't use fire or even stone tools, simply eating plants instead. All of their remains have been found in one cave from South Africa. And here's the entire species laid out on a table. There's no doubt that millions of them lived, but this is all we have left. And what is stranger is that they actually may have buried their dead. The remains ended up in the very back chamber of a cave, suggesting they intentionally deposited them there. And if true, this is the oldest evidence of burial on Earth. They eventually went extinct, probably due to our own ancestors. To learn more, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Northo2, and check out my recent video about the African ghost hominids.
The reptilians were the natives of this planet. And back during the first ice age, they went underground. And that's how they ended up surviving. So the Galactic Federation knew this, that this was indeed their planet. So they made a compromise with these reptilians. And they said, okay, we recognize that this is your planet. As long as you stay here, but you're not seen, you go back underground, we'll allow you to be here. So half the reptilians left off this planet. The other half stayed. And they went back into their tunnels, they went back into inner Earth, they went back underground. And eventually the reptilians started meshing their DNA with our DNA. They started to be able to shapeshift into us. They abided by the law. They definitely weren't seen by us, but they were still always in control, and I still believe to this day they're in control.
Well, my question is, are they paying taxes?
And let's see, she's obviously, wait, hold on. Sloan, what happens to the original person after they're cloned? Okay, you guys have to stop repeating your questions over and over. The original person's consciousness is stored in a separate space. So there is the physicality of the person and the consciousness. Those are two different things. Right now I exist with my consciousness, my spirit, my etheric, and my physical body. So the consciousness of myself, the way that I am, okay, the way that I am as a person, that consciousness and that mindset is put over here and aside. I do not know what happens to the physical body. If they remove the consciousness, they can pretty much put a different consciousness inside a person and they would respond differently but look similar. So I'm not sure if that's how they do it, okay? Yes, I don't forget OG anybody. OG. I do not forget the OG. The OG people.
Original gangster?
You know what's hit my head? Really weird. Okay. Do you know what has hit my head? What the hell is wrong with Corey Feldman? What is he out there doing? What is happening?
So next question from Cat55K. Tell us what would happen if you accidentally go through a portal on Earth. Thank you.
You do all the time, Masters. You go through portals all the time. All the time. They're everywhere. Okay? The thing is that some of the portals open up into a very similar timeline, and you may not notice. At all. And you may retract on yourself and walk back through it. Usually you can feel it. If you get energetically sensitive enough, you'll get wonky, right? You'll get pulled in another direction, but you can pull yourself back or not. But you are a endlessly multifractal being, Masters, and there is an infinite amount of versions of you in this likeness that you are, as well as an infinite array of variations, because, Masters, the truth is there's only one of us here. Okay? And you are not a human being. You are a soul, and a soul has no embodiment aspect to it. And it does not get thrust into any aspect of thought that it does not desire to experience. So what happens? Anything you choose to happen, Master. You are source.
Happened was people, very smart people, began to figure out that something big was coming up. Something that made it so all the possibilities of all the future scenarios of any choice, any possibility that was fed in and observed through the looking glass inherently ended up in the same future. And no decision, no possibility changed past a certain point. That's the big secret.
Okay, so is that certain 2012 in your understanding?
It well coincides with December 21st, 2012.
So at that point, all possibilities lead to the same
timelines.
Rubicon.
All possible timelines lead to the same basic set of history in the future.
And what is that history to you? Did you know that, or did you find that out?
That is the big question. That is the big secret. That is what sends everybody that has all of the information, that knows everything, into a blind panic. The people that know everything about Looking Glass, that have gotten all the reports and all the information, the elites of the world, probably figured out that that was the end of the game. And nothing could be manipulated beyond that point.
So do you think that's held true? In other words, well, I have about 60 questions, but do you think that's true or holding true, that nothing could be manipulated, that they haven't found a way to manipulate that's still the case? I mean, this is knowledge that you would have gained back when?
Back when I was in the military, it would have been before 97.
The first UFO recoveries were in the late 30s. We made a couple in the beginning of the 40s, and then came Roswell, which the public found out about. We got 2 live aliens from Roswell. One died shortly thereafter, one lived until 1956. And we found out that so far there are 18 different alien species that we know about monitoring Earth. Some are good, some are hostile, most are indifferent. We found out the aliens refer to us as containers. There's been speculation that the souls our bodies contains is the reason for the experiment, but nothing has been proven or determined.
Is that Master Yoda?
That's right, King Selassie. Okay, you're getting there. Okay, you are getting there. Now let's move forward so you understand how that works. Okay? So you understand how that works. This is King Selassie. Do you remember the picture I showed you? The front? Let me bring it back to the Medici. Let me bring Medici back. You looking at this picture real good now? And look at this. Do you see where this is going? Okay. This is his bloodline, his lineage. Now pay attention. His name is what? Selassie. You know what cousin is? Medici. You know what other cousin? Orsini. Let me keep on moving. We ain't stopping because y'all need to get this because it's very important. Now understand. They love to say, oh, the whitey's in charge. Oh, look at this and look at that. But every time you hear the whitey, people need to understand. Whitey mean the corporations of today. Remember, what you call United States, it's a corporation that we, our indigenous people, agree to discharge the debt of these indentured servants that actually get the green light from Morocco. Morocco was the first to agree to say, okay, these whitey people can stay in America and we're not going to ask them to pay the debt back. We can discharge the debt. So Morocco was the first to agree to discharge the debt for these indentured servants. And that's a fact. Now, I'm going to show you more. Wait a minute now.
So from the Rothschilds to the Lee family are protected by the 9 Black Greek secret societies of Black fraternities and Black sororities. Well, in the 1969 book, The History of Sigma Pi Phi, Alpha Phi Alpha protects the Rothschilds. Kappa Alpha Psi protects the Oppenheimers. Omega Psi Phi protects the Warburgs. Phi Beta Sigma protects the Rockefellers. Iota Phi Theta protects the Astor family. Alpha Kappa Alpha protects the Bilderbergs. Delta Sigma Theta protects the Habsburg family that exists to this day. Zeta Phi Beta, another Boule secret society, protects the Sassoons. And Sigma Gamma Rho, RHO, protects the Lee family. Wait a minute now. So you have...
It has already started.
It has already started?
Back in the day, it used to cost $50,000. Who knows how much it costs now? If you ever notice a rapper first, everything's fine. Then something goes wrong. They get out of line. They end up in jail. They come back looking totally different. And it's up to us if we're going to let them play in our face or if we're going to go, that ain't him. And then speaking of they clone Tyrone, isn't Jamie Foxx part of that?
He came out looking, they were like, where's the tattoo?
Where's his tattoo on the back of his head?
They showed a picture of him.
He was in like McDonald's or Wendy's or some damn where. It looked like the clone was just testing itself out. Like, yeah, all right, I'm out. Let's see what's going on. I'm happy to be in the world. It seemed like the clone was literally testing himself out. But my thing is, where was the tattoo in the back of his head? And it just makes you wonder, like, do they do this shit to, like, play with us, to, like, see if we know, to see if we still dumb, to see how many of us are dumb, to see how many of us are brainwashed so they can know how many more to continue to brainwash?
So where are the originals?
Look at you, little guy. You really do look like a tiny Nessie. Those eyes are wild. Just cruising around like you own the tank. All right, buddy. Say bye.
There's a baby Loch Ness monster.
This smell of sulfur or burnt cardboard or ammoniac. It's like this very distinct, potent, putrid smell.
They were very bird-like. They would disappear when you got near them. So I go creeping downstairs and out onto the front porch. It's still standing there, doing this, moving their arms, and, you know, I'm trying to figure out what they're doing. And so I step down into the yard, and they're still doing it, moving their arms. Then there's a telepathic message that they're cleansing themselves, that it's waste matter. It was like they were defecating, but they do it through their skin. Years and years and years pass. I pick up the Reddit document, and the first paragraph is that described exactly.
And then we heard about it during the Varginha case.
Just the smells in the Varginha case.
The smells, and that there was slime. They were oily.
Well, they are.
Don't people associate sulfur with hauntings and demons also?
I'm sorry, but what the hell? There is no flipping way. You may or may not have heard about this book called Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, along with another book by the same author called The Last President. I've spoken about this a few times before. Not to say that the front cover does look like Baron Trump, but people can see the resemblance. Now, the story is basically about Baron Trump who goes on this adventure and discovers time travel, and it gets interesting because his father/mentor is called Donald, and there's a lot of other names in the book that literally represent real things. I mean, it is nuts considering this book was written in like the 1800s. But this is the bit people didn't realise, so stick with me. This guy is John G. Trump, who is Trump's uncle, and this guy actually worked for the FBI. He was a very, very smart man, and when Nikola Tesla died, he was actually the one who was sent in and basically went and examined the site to look at his findings and what he discovered. If you know anything about Tesla, it's basically all about time travel, teleportation. He was trying to harness energy and do all these crazy things, and this guy most likely would have found/seen something in there. So as crazy as it sounds, people believe that he may have actually found some kind of time travel, which then Trump actually has now. I know it sounds absolutely insane and unbelievable, and I'm not saying I believe it at all, but it is an insane coincidence.
Now, I didn't know that this wasn't common knowledge. And if you didn't know this, that means you don't follow me. But white people have always indulged in cannibalism. They ate their slaves, and they ate black people that were free after the Emancipation Proclamation, after lynchings. If you didn't know this, you don't follow me. And if you don't follow me, you should follow me. My name's Kim History. I teach Black history. I'm not part of Hillman Talk. I just do this for fun and out of the passion that I have for spreading Black history. And just like everything else on my page, I'm not just feeding you a bunch of bullshit. There are a plethora of books that you can look into that proves that this is a fact. Books like The Delectable Negro, which covers recipes of how to eat Black people.
What?
Another book called Edible People, The Historical Consumption of Negroes and Foreigners, and I believe it was like The Cannibalistic Trade. And that's just two of many. But yeah, if you want to know more about the topic, if you scroll down on my page, I have a video called White People Ate Black People. It's very...
Mr. Rothschild, how you doing, sir? Can you tell us what went on at the Bilderberg meeting this year?
Sorry?
Can you tell us what went on at the Bilderberg meeting this year?
I didn't get that, actually, no.
The Bilderberg? You weren't there?
No.
Not this year. What went on last year?
No, I wasn't there last year. I think that was my cousin.
The cousin was there?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Good night.
Do you have a couple minutes for us, Mr. Rothschild? We have a few additional questions. I got some question inside as I was saying that the Federal Reserve was one of these organizations. It's one of these organizations that a lot of people say is the source of main products all across the world because it's a private bank that was started by a family.
No, it's completely untrue. I was asked that earlier. It really isn't true. No.
Jekyll Island? Sir, just one thing. We could go on about how, your family committed all these acts against society, but we just want to let you know the New World Order has no legitimacy. And that we as a people are not afraid, and we are waking up to the robber barons and the big banksters who are looting this economy with the Federal Reserve.
Well,
family worth $500 trillion and no security.
First thing I noticed is that more and more vehicles were arriving as the sun was going down. But after a while sitting there in the dark, things started to get interesting. first thing I noticed was a light appeared on the ground. It was too faint for me to see with the naked eye, but through my nods, it showed up very bright. This was indicating to me that the hatch was most likely opening to the underground silo. Wow, this looks crazy. They got it rotating up there on that pylon. Security truck down there making another pass. I don't know why they have their hazards on.
This guy YouTube channel is really good. He finds good vantage points and has good equipment. By the way, it's not deleted.
To take seriously this claim on the part of the Nazi leadership that they wanted a 1,000-year Reich.
Gab uns kein irdischer Vorgesetzter!
1,000-year imperium is no joke.
Perhaps the best-known abduction of all, and one of the earliest reported, is the abduction of a well-respected New England couple, Betty and Barney Hill.
Look back at Barney Hill's original statements.
The evil face, he looks like a German Nazi.
Mankind has been seeking knowledge.
Allen Dulles and his brother, John Foster Dulles, together with J.P. Morgan Chase and Rockefeller, funded the rise of the Nazis.
Is the implication that there's some sort of Nazi sleeper cell undergirding American politics today?
So World War II is not what we think it is. They were seeing these rocket-like things that were saucer-shaped being launched from Spain, the Mediterranean coast, over toward America.
Really?
1 year later, what happens? Roswell.
I mean, is the idea that there is some sort of like Atlantean surviving remnant group that's still there?
So for all we know, what's happening is that a future state of a certain culture is contacting itself in the past.
Trying to pull the timeline towards itself or something?
To actualize itself. Transtemporally actualize itself.
Wow.